eye level. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, this is for the people. Yeah. That's, all right, so we can get started, huh? Okay. Are you reading tonight? You're going to read in Spanish, right? Chévere. Very good. I know at least me and Ricardo will be cool with that. You know, we'll figure something out here. But huh? Well, we may if somebody steps up now, Ricardo. We may demand, like at the UN, the interpreters, like someone's talking and they're talking a half second right after them. I know. Well, they got to be sharp. You either have nothing to drink or too much to drink. Those are two ways to do it. Yeah, no, that's the thing. Of course, poetry is. Yeah, yeah. All right, so I guess as we're getting underway, welcome everyone to our usual first Thursday of the month poetry event. Normally, the format is we have two featured readers who read for 20 minutes, and then a brief break, and then people read. You sign up on the list and read. 3 maybe 5 minutes, kind of a short thing. Today, now, sadly enough, this is a very interesting week. We've all been traumatized one way or another with the events of the week. The original person who was scheduled to read with someone who I didn't know, but a man named Peter Carroll, a distinguished scholar who I didn't realize he had 20 books. He's published 20 books. He was going to read his initial poetry from his initial poetry book celebrating the Abraham Lincoln Brigade fighters in the Spanish Civil War who were fighting for the Republic. And I've been corresponding with him on email. Lo and behold, a few weeks before tonight, I, was in touch with. I said, we're really looking forward to it. It's going to be great. 2 days later, his wife emails me and says, "Have tragic news. Peter just dropped dead, unexpectedly." I was just, you know, it just, yeah, it's just really. So that kind of sent me for a loop. And then we set up a Dan Richman, a local poet who's been around and does some interesting things. And he was supposed to read tonight, and he's had health issues, and he's very sick. He called in today, and he said he can't come in. So we are the survivors who are going to entertain one another in our own fashion. And is everyone here going to read something? Going to great. So it would be nice. So I won't even have a list. What we'll do is I'll, read just a couple little things, and then, I guess everyone has a little extra time if you want, 10 minutes. I mean, good poetry. It doesn't take a lot of it to fill up the space. So, you don't have to read for hours to express yourself. But and also, Ricardo will explain the Poetry for the People thing that he set up in the bookstore. That's an ongoing event. It's going to last for a month.
It's gonna last from this open mic to the next open mic.
Oh, okay,
We'll
beautiful.
close it
Okay,
to the next open mic. Maybe we'll get some folks that submit to read the
okay,
next
good,
open mic.
great. Okay, no, it was yeah. So, yeah, without further ado, I am going to start with a poem by someone else, by Lawrence Ferlinghetti. Of course, most people know he's a very important person in post-war North American poetry. City Lights Bookstore is actually the first pocket book store. Like the paperbacks. That whole new genre of book. Books everywhere. Like he did a lot of great things. He was a painter, kind of a little bit of a philosopher, and what have you. Sadly, in this poem too, a friend sent it to me and said, It's sad that I have to send this poem. It's still apropos. It's entitled "Pity the Nation." It's Lawrence Ferlinghetti said, after Khalil Gibran, the great Lebanese mystical poet, from 2007. Because this was during the George W. Bush era, which was another very ugly era in our history. But Pity the nation whose people are sheep and whose shepherds mislead them. Pity the nation whose leaders are liars, whose sages are silenced, and whose bigots haunt the airwaves. Pity the nation that raises not its voice except to praise conquerors and acclaim the bully as hero, and aims to rule the world by force and by torture. Pity the nation that knows no other language but its own, and no other culture but its own. Pity the nation whose breath is money, and sleeps the sleep of the too well-fed. Pity the nation, oh, pity the people who allow their rights to erode and their freedoms to be washed away. My country, tears of thee, sweet land of liberty. So yeah, man. So, so I have something new that was kind of it came to fruition this week, I guess, inspired by the events of the week. It's kind of unfinished, and I don't know. It's certainly not as morally focused as Ferlinghetti's poem, but and today I happen to see is a book called Lies and Politics by Hannah Arendt, the German philosopher, political philosopher. And a quote from her book is, "The result of a consistent and total substitution of lies for factual truth is not that the lies will now be accepted as truth, and the truth defamed as lies, but that the sense by which we take our bearings in the real world and the category of truth versus falsehood is among the mental means to this end is being destroyed." And we are at a moment when, truth and falsehood, they have been very sadly mixed up. So this is entitled Eternally on the Cutting Edge, November 5th, 2024. People savor lies. Who wants to be moored to 4 dimensions? Is a stingray a high-performance muscle car, or a menacing marine creature characterized by salt crystal beauty? Lies are cost-effective shortcuts to glory. I'm not going to lie to you. I swear in my mother's grave, the truth and nothing but the truth is dead. The ocean, dangerous when wet. It takes 2 to tango. In vino veritas. Small plovers in noisy tractors litter the beach's off-key thunder, or is that the surf speaking in tongues? Trust me. Drink a shot of bleach. Guzzle some horse dewormer. That's kind of a bleak little take on, yes. No, I'll finish with this one from, which I think actually was inspired by the 2016 debacle of an election. Anthem. My country, 'tis of thee I sing, and splinter, spit and reel, hot on the heels of your ghastly soul's promiscuous Ophe God, your dung-struck, battle-scarred sky of murdered menstrual booziness burning out of control, your moon at half-mast on the oil slick of your genocidal bad hair, and still I love something impaled on you, and strip search another octave for one more hopeful song. So again, it's like, desperation, nihilism, black humor, but also that sense that we all have to, nurture the love and hopefulness inside of ourselves, replenish ourselves, and be kind to one another. That's, the story, because these clowns out here do not want us to be kind to one another. That's the sad truth. So we could just go around. I mean, you want to, Ricardo, you want to go next? You could explain your project that's going on and, do whatever, and, and we'll just do it that way.
Hey, folks. I'm Ricardo Elizalde. I'm currently a teacher on sabbatical. And what they have you do for these sabbaticals is take a couple of classes at City College. There's other things you can do, but that's what I chose to do. And so one of the things that I'm doing this semester is taking a class called Poetry for the People. And Poetry for the People is a class that one of the goals of that class is to get you outside to read to people and to share the different poems that you've written and maybe share some other poems. And so I'm going to explain the project to you, and then I'm going to read a couple of examples of what I'm hoping maybe you'll contribute. So the field project is an invitation to read a few example poems, and the examples are very simple. There's a list of why poetry, where a bunch of poets they talk about why we should write poetry. And there's also one. The other prompt is I come from. The boxes in the back. There's pens. There's these cards like this, and there's examples of the poems. I'm gonna read the first poem, and this is it's called I Come From. I'm going to give you a little bit of background. And I want you to think about an ancestor that you have and that you would like to bring into this space. That's all I want you to do. You have an ancestor, bring that person into this space, and maybe that person is sitting next to you. Okay? And this is what this poem's about. I Come From by Ricardo Elizalde. I come from. At a professional development in Arizona, the Hawaiian facilitators asked the same question. Their assessment session in full swing begun with a circle. I was late, pushed into the circle, and boom, my turn. Where do you come from? What ancestors do you bring to this circle? What are your waters? I said, I bring into this circle my father, Alberto Alcibiades Elizalde. My waters? I'd never thought of this. Seems Hawaiian children, when they're doing tribal work, before they carve their canoes, always ask each other, where are your waters? But my pop never had to answer that question. Though when he arrived, he threatened to swim back. I think. San Francisco Bay, Pacific Ocean, all the way down south to where the salt from the bay mingles with the salt from the Rio Guayas, more than 1,000 miles south. I come from, or rather my waters are, the bay, the Pacific, and Rio Guayas. A connection with my papi I never saw. I come from my brother Willie asking me to write more. I come from dinner with family, wait until everyone is served, until you start. Quiet until it's time to speak. I come from that blue-collar San Francisco that every now and then I still catch a glimpse of. Catching that glimpse right now here at Bird and Beckett Books. Thank you, guys. The other prompt is why poetry. So this is not written by me. This is written by somebody named Santiago Alvarez. Why poetry? Poetry for the people, poetry for purpose, poetry for connection, poetry for practice. Because these pitiful institutions aim to crush the oral traditions our bloodlines are survived by. Survival. Poetry for survival. Poetry because we see the physical bridges between this land and our homelands. Poetry for self-determination. Poetry as an act of resistance. Poetry as a process of transformation. Poetry for the people. All right. We got one more. So yes, I invite you. The box is back there. Hopefully you guys come back, grab one of these cards, write something about either one of those prompts, and put it back in the box. And there's a digital space where I'm hoping to collect these poems and share. And maybe next month you come back and read what you've written, what you've submitted. You write it however you see fit, man. However it comes to you. I don't know that this thing is a poem, but I wrote it down. All right, so I'm going to give you a little bit of background. And Let's start with a memory. Several years ago, it's the last day of school. I walk into the main office, not to anyone in particular. I shout, say loudly, "Today is a day of great joy." Brother Keith laughs from the mailroom. May he rest in peace. I say, "What?" "Nothing. I want to go to your church." And this is the poem I quoted. Today is a day of great joy. When they stop poems in the mail and clap their hands and dance to them. When women become pregnant by the side of poems, the strongest sounds making the river go long. It's a great day as poems fall down to movie crowds in restaurants, in bars, when poems start to knock down walls to choke politicians, when poems scream and begin to break the air. That is the time of true poets. That is the time of greatness. A true poet aiming poems and watching things fall to the ground. It is a great day. So I invite you to participate. There's the thing, the box is in the back. That's my turn.
Very nice.
Thank you guys. Thank you.
Please announce who you are.
I like sitting here. So I'm Rose Mark. Can you hear me? Okay. And under all the craziness and anxieties and sadness, et cetera, around this election and fears, I've been inspired to write a bunch of poems and just stuff about resilience. So this is one. It's not a poem. It's just a little essay. This is called Mo Fat Ji, which is Chinese. And I'm going to read it now. There's a Chinese saying, Mo Fat Ji, which can be translated into a couple of sayings. For the crass, it's, "You're out of luck, buddy." A picture of someone with a wry look on their face, with hands upturned and shoulders shrugged. What are you going to do? Give it up. You don't have a chance, so accept your bad luck. It's fate. I heard that saying a lot when I was growing up. When my parents were trying to make a new life in the States, it seemed that every venture they tried failed. Dad no longer had a successful tailoring business in Hawaii. Mom, who never worked after marrying Dad, didn't have any workable skills. The only significant skill that she had was that she was an incredible cook. But Chinese restaurants did not use women cooks in the early 50s. So they tried to sell their wares, special cookies, ready-made grilled cheese sandwiches to be warmed up in a toaster oven in bars. No such luck. Every time I heard the word Mo Fat Ji, I felt depressed. Dad and Mom kept trying to find the means to keep food on the table and a roof over our heads. And they succeeded by having 5 of their 6 kids take on side jobs. They all worked except for me, since I was 11 and a girl to boot. They pulled together, never complaining, because survival was expected, and the ability to do this depended on each of them pulling their weight. whatever the word is. I think wait was not it. Wait, yes, I just spelled it wrong. Sorry. Okay. Dad ended up working 3 jobs as a janitor, working late afternoon to the early hours of the morning. Mom ended up working in a Chinatown sweatshop, ironing blouses, as she was not familiar with sewing machines, since all her clothes had been custom made or bought during my parents' financial heyday. My oldest brother gave up going to college because he had to help pay for our house payments after my parents used their remaining money to put a down payment on our home in Potrero Hill. In 1956, they bought a 4-bedroom house for the grand price of $16,000. Potrero Hill was a neighborhood surrounded by warehouses and was considered the boondocks then. Dad finally got a job with the post office sorting mail. Mom continued at the sewing factory, while the 2 oldest kids, who had graduated high school, got jobs, full-time jobs. The remaining 4 kids eventually finished school, and after high school, 2 of my brothers went into the military. With less kids in the house and the remaining kids working, our family settled down to a fairly stable life. Life continued. Brothers and sisters got married. All my siblings lived at home until I married. I was the only child in the family to live on my own before marriage. I left home because my oldest brother bossed me around too much. Things got patched up eventually with me and my family. I worked until I got married and had my first child. I tried to finish college, but life became too complicated with the needs of my children and the eventual dissolution ending of my first marriage. The phrase "Mofatji" echoed into my consciousness with each challenge I encountered with my marriage and the difficulties my first child was experiencing. But I didn't abandon them. I stuck around and kept trying. There was no giving up. Each challenge was followed by the need to survive and power through things. Life brings challenges. A lot of times it feels like shit. You feel miserable struggling through the difficulties, but you keep going. Now in my late 70s, after having a series of strokes, cardiac stuff, fractured pelvis, shoulders, knee problems, arthritis shot through my body, loss of hearing, continual medical surprises that come with aging, I hear the word Mofatji echo through me and realize that what it really means to me now is to accept what life brings you and keep on moving forward, keep on, keep on. There's so much living to do until there isn't. Okay. And I want to add one side note. By the way, that 4-bedroom house in Potrero Hill that cost Mom and Dad $16,000 in 1956, it sold over for $2 million a couple of years ago. Nice, huh? So thank you for listening.
Rose, very inspiring. Thank you so much.
Thank
Oh,
you.
my goodness.
Thank you for listening.
Wow. You're really next, so love it. Sure. Tough act to follow, but I know you're up to it.
You know, I wanted to be living in luxury, and that's why I married a
Yeah,
school teacher.
Good move. As we get older, our notions
So I finished. Oh, I'm Larry Beresford. I'm married to this gal, and we came all the way from Oakland tonight. I won a prize for poetry, third place in the dancing poetry contest, and I won a cash prize of $10. I haven't cashed the check. I think I should just frame it and put it on the wall. So this is the prize-winning poem called Late Middle Age. As the memory starts to oscillate, a compensatory accumulation of experience, some might call it wisdom, a wider perspective of the big picture, a longer view of the journey as a whole, enables me to clearly see how those damned kids are driving us all to hell in a 5G handbasket. All right. This is I don't know what you call this, a spiritual political poem. I wrote it about 15 years ago, and it's got some references back then, but I just decided to preserve the archival nature of it, and it seems to be coming up to date again. But it's called Lowercase Compassion. Just like you, I entertain revenge fantasies. And I have a long list of enemies, real and imagined, at whom I would fling the perfect withering retort. All those knuckleheads who need their heads knuckled, their faces pushed in the mud. How about a kneecap-shattering pipe wrench? You know, fantasy. Okay, just let me be clear on it. Fantasy. Stop sign runners, cell phone drivers, subprime speculators, Rick Santorum. Remember that name? The Salesian Academy soccer mom in the gray SUV who cut me off at the dangerous merge onto I-80. I'm talking about bigots, racists, sexists, rich bastards, willful stupidity in abundance. How can I stick up for truth except through my florid revenge fantasies? I spin scenarios in the car, on the computer, in the shower, walking the dog. The dog feels the same way, judging by her pointing posture. When she breaks training to lunge, our hearts are both racing. An East Oakland cat lives across the street, but I'm not altering my route just to avoid confrontation. I look up into the yard for that pesky cat and see, instead, a small, white, seated Buddha. Oh, I get it. This is about compassion, right? Plain old compassion with a lowercase c. I don't need to give away my possessions or get a begging bowl. I don't need another elaborate scenario in my head. Just to be reminded, take a breath, ease up on the leash, and consider, maybe this once, leaving the pipe wrench back at home in its tool chest. All right. Did I do one more? Okay. Some of you are old enough to appreciate this poem. It's called Vietnam Revisited. What did we learn from opposing the war in Vietnam? For one thing, what an incredible opportunity to get laid. Every march, every teach-in, every occupied office of the dean was a social mixer of astronomical proportions, with the greatest soundtrack in history. Are you kidding me? Aretha, Creedence, Jimmy and Janice, Otis and Marvin, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Sure, some young male protesters had an abiding desire not to get shot in a humid swamp in country. But youth must claim its imperatives. The movement was life transforming, and if you could avert your eyes for a minute from all that flesh, what did you uncover about how wars are really fought? That's what made Ho Chi Minh a hero to many, McNamara hero to none. It wasn't Jane Fonda who lost our war. It was Nixon who cynically bailed on his troops, Kissinger who sold their souls for a Nobel Prize. Ellsberg showed us we would never win, but Johnson's tool on the table was driving the bus. And if you were paying attention at the teach-in, did you learn the lessons of insurgency and asymmetrical conflict, unconventional warfare, and the guerrillas' imperatives? After all, one side has more bombs and bombers, big-ass tanks and battleships, weapons of mega destruction, and the side without those big bombs has to dig tunnels underground, coming out at night with handmade explosives. Today we call them terrorists, not the big planes and drones that rain death from a safe distance. If your playing field isn't level, how are you supposed to play this game? What asymmetrical acts of desperation are acceptable, reasonable, even commendable? How have the little guys, the occupied, the invaded, the tunnel rats, claimed their day in the sun? We could ask the Cherokee, the Sioux, and Apache. Ask Fred Hampton and Philadelphia Move. For extra points, can you think of a contemporary example? And what have you learned about asymmetrical warfare? Thank you. Rose and I are reading with 9 other featured poets over 2.5 hours in Live Oak Park in Berkeley on Saturday, starting at 12:30. Outdoor reading. Yeah. So if anyone... Thank you.
Okay. Can y'all hear me okay? All right. Let me put on a timer just so I know where I am. Okay. Sorry, got to do the millennial thing and use the phone. Okay. Where is it? There it is. Observing and the observed. To see beyond the limited scope of beliefs, ideologies, dogmas, where thought is not forced or controlled, when the quiet allows for infinity to emerge as the sunrise ascends over the mountain crest. Thou art one and the same, experience and the experiencer together. My vast mind is consciousness in action. No separation. The trash in my neighborhood or down the street is the world I live in, actively and with distinct purpose, a distant yet real prospect. Nature as I, and I thus as nature. For the habit is changed by this being, the eternity of now, not by divisive thought or internal struggle, but by the trust for intuition and self. Dost thou trust the self as the flowers trust the sun? More words cannot set the entity free, as more thought means more tension, more doubt, and possibly more fear of the unknown. Love beyond the conceptual mind. Breathe the body back to calm. Find serene paths with focused precision. You are only beginning to understand yourself in the purest perspective, past the past and halting the future. Thou exists now. In this measure of the mental construction of time, do not seek, be the energy you need. Immense power awaits for your approval to unleash all your stored up potential. Okay. Thanks, guys. All right. Open dialogues. To seek out the best human wisdom had to offer and go beyond, not in fear, but in solid ground and belief that human consciousness could flourish as the infinite night sky or calming underwater currents. Thou art powerful past nervous system tendencies, a divine being of the cosmos, focused here and now on the breath. For in the present inhale, we find strength, and in the exhale, we let that bullshit go. Let us come together in one measure of love. Let us stand united against hate and recognize when it is building within us. For we are not better than other beings, but a part of one stem, one story waiting to see its great worth from within itself flourish. Thus, we find power we never knew existed. We find gratitude in life itself. This gift we have for a short time, it becomes a choice we interact with interactively, where we choose the world we wish to live in. Through storms and over mountains, thou hast risen once before, and thou shalt rise once again. Feel the seasonal wind on your face, enlivening those cheekbones, bringing the senses to life. Drink the sacred elixir, which makes all life possible. For the replenished body and soul are guided by the care of a majestic, spectacular mind, one that is just here and present. Go forth then and thrive today. Remind your thoughts who is in charge, not by force, but that the whole being would act as one unit for the good of the universe, goodness to all living entities, and of course thus to the self. All right, one more, a little shorter one. Reigns. Your best self remembers how far you have come and uses said strength to be bold and hopeful, that all of your gathered peace shall not be undone, but to see your soul rising as the desert mystic day rise. Keep your breath serene, still, calm. I see the inner deity from your depths, ready to take hold of the reins. Run wild, run free. Your infinite being taught deep water ocean currents how to reset the still observer who had come to them for answers, but most of all, to believe. Thank you, guys.
I'm Daniela from Mexico City. Daniela. Sí. I write in Spanish, so I'm gonna read in Spanish. Sorry for those who don't speak Spanish. My sister is here. I'm here for a month in San Francisco, like maybe 5 blocks away from here. So maybe I'll be visiting the library, the bookstore. Yeah, for sure.
You were here as part of a school thing? Or what is it?
No, I'm here as a babysitter because my because my sister just had a baby, so I'm here to help. Hmm Thank you. She's here. Yeah, sorry. Is that okay?
Hay que pasar por La Misión. ¿Conoces el barrio de La Misión?
Todavía no.
Bueno, el centro de la cultura
Ah,
latino en la ciudad.
okay.
Yeah, you gotta come by.
Tengo que ir a descubrir.
You can be the guide.
Okay, so these poems are part of a book I'm writing about female relationships and female representation in literature. And they talk about my grandmother and my relationship with her. The first one is named Otros Cuerpos. Tu andar lento me desespera, a mí que persigo al tiempo. Una vez me dijiste que tú a mi edad había días en los que no hacías nada. Me ves revolotear sin pausa, de seguro te mareo. No me entiendes y yo a ti tampoco. Comprendo que tus rezos y tu risa corresponden a un dolor que algún día conoceré. Pero me abrazas y te abrazo porque sí nos comprendemos. Ambas somos parte de una misma soledad, un mismo calor derrochado. Tú decidiste cuidarme y yo decido estar para ti, aun si mi cariño se tiñe de rabia. No existe la pureza en el amor, solo la distancia para regresar al cariño entera. I'm going to read 4 poems, and they're not so long. This one is Madre Hermana. De cierta forma, mamá y yo somos hermanas, hijas de la misma madre, disciplinaria y terca, bromista e infantil, la misma madre y tan distinta. La madre que no tuviste lo fue para mí. Mijita, dime, tú no, mi hija chiquita. Soy yo, la otra hija, hija del cuerpo pequeño que salió de ti. Todas somos madres, mamá, madre de su madre, antes de tiempo, y a tiempo también. Yo, madrecita, de mi abuela en cama, madre grande que aún cuida de mi susto, mi sueño y mi semblante. Mamá, ya lo siento, algún día cuidaré de ti. Somos linaje de madres diabéticas, madres que roban dulces de las manos de los niños, madres adictas, madres quitadas de la pena para comer galletas que son de otras bocas. Gozan, disfrutan ganar, masticar, decir yo antes que otro. Ese placer es suyo, en esos sí inquebrantables, inamovibles, firmes, en ese precioso egoísmo que puede más que sí mismas. Antigua belleza. Me parece linda la cara de mi abuela, sus ojos que sonríen, tal vez de vuelta, su boca pequeña y rosa y su nariz respingada, que no ha crecido como en otros viejos, ensanchándose en el rostro. Su cabello fino, que es gris y negro y blanco, y alguna vez fue azul, que se acomoda en ondas sin esfuerzo, justo arriba de su frente. Sus orejas simétricas, que se adornan con aretes, de colores y de perlas, porque siempre ha sido tan coqueta. Si bien sus dientes se quebraron con su última caída anterior al marcapasos, su sonrisa es liviana, amable, como intuyo que lo fue siempre. Pienso que es una suerte que hable tanto, así me siento escucharla aunque no me oiga, y sigue, hasta que la circunstancia pone un freno natural a sus historias. La gente la ama, es tan carismática, incluyéndome a mí, que la amo tanto, que la veo tan bella, y lo es, aún sin dentadura, cuando pasa días sin bañarse, en cama. Me parece tierna y bella, tanto que me arropo entre sus brazos para tocar su piel, que quizá ya nadie toca, y ese abrazo contenido nos sostiene. Tengo ganas de decirle, la gente no se hace fea con los años, los viejos no pierden belleza, más bien será que mueren los ojos enamorados. Quisiera que su amor viviera aún para decirle a mi abuela que es tan hermosa ahora como siempre, y que ese cuerpo que resiste y se duele en el tiempo todavía contiene todo el esplendor de su existencia. No, I think that's it. That's all I'm gonna read.
Who are your favorite poets?
I like the young poets that are now getting a voice in Mexico, but I don't think they're really known in here. And
You don't love any of los grandes establecidos poetas?
sí, claro, Rosario Castellanos, and I haven't really read a lot of the English tradition, to be honest. Yeah, but I would love to grab some books now that I'm here.
Beautiful.
Bueno.
Thank you so much. So you're here for a month.
Yeah.
All right. Well, very nice.
So, you can hear me okay?
Tell us your name. Don't forget.
Oh, my name is David Hutchinson. And tonight's the second time I heard the word "au fait" from a person that I know, sort of slightly. The first time was a trumpet teacher that I studied with, who always called our sessions social visits, I reckon. Anyway, I wrote about this in a book. And for me, that word inspires a sort of a thought experiment that involves what is fake and where do we start? Because everything, we all come from the same place, so nothing really is fake. It's simply that who was the first to agree with the first person who said something was fake. And it comes from a story, an anecdote, if you will, from John Coppola, my trumpet teacher, getting a job really early, and then in West Oakland as a trumpet player in Charlie Parker's band. And the whole, he was Italian, and the whole neighborhood, I guess, was then. And so there was a tour bus that, so John invited the band over to have dinner with his family, and his dad spoke no English. And so they all showed up, and Charlie Parker's band got off the bus in this neighborhood who really had never seen black people, apparently, or, it wasn't familiar. And so John's dad challenged Charlie Parker to a hot pepper eating contest. And John's dad spoke no English, and Charlie Parker spoke no Italian. So but they agreed to have this contest, and they ate hot peppers, and then somebody yelled out the word "au fait," and so that's where that context of that word arrived.
Good to know it's related to Pig Latin. Faux is au fait. So it's like the hipsters, underground hipsters use that to refer to the mainstream people, white people, whatever.
Yeah.
Au fait. Yeah, it's a great. It's a great word.
It's something. And John had another story about gosh, it's hard to remember. He knew Louis Armstrong. Everybody called him Louis. And he rode the train because they rode trains back then. And Louis Armstrong and strangely, Frank Sinatra were really early integrators of the jazz clubs because they all refused to play if the clubs weren't integrated. So anyway, Louis took a liking to John because he was young and good, I guess. And so he liked John to sit next to him on the train. And Louis Armstrong liked to write letters to people. He had, he knew a lot of folks because he was good. And so he had a typewriter he used to ride on his lap, and he'd write letters to famous people. And so John happened to look over, and Louis Armstrong was writing to the Duke of Windsor. And so John looked at the first line, and it was, "Hey, Duke, how's the old lady?" So I kind of stole both of them in a way, those anecdotes. So now I'll read a few poems I tried to print but failed. So this one's called To the Point. And we know sharp from the pierce, the hue beside the cover, drawn out at last in the shape of side looks, numb from the ravine on down, unceasing in relation, a pier beset by the onslaught overcome, long enough for the gull to ride the blade on ragged wingtips. Over vast and reaching plains that only ever beckon soundless from above, the descent unto the empty dust that once rose in spinal descant strains, that dive that sears the shorelines of the midway broken, left to carry on, now exiled in a half shell on the beach. And this one I called Wave Crest. Oldest waves are hills crested to starlight oceans. One treads on higher. Correlates and cormorants fly the spans and seasons all. And this one is called Synonym. I wrote it today. There can be none for such as that alone, that carries only the weight of sand and a vanished vessel, divin to a depths of dark creation, where wait all the lost palabras for the sky and still floating on the scent of a bright and gifted beach, pondering how not to forget or embrace a fragment of the past that seeks simply to perceive that rewards of availments are the limits of an offer found in detritus distilled by clades that spout some mutual exchange between the sea and heights of reach.
And I'll do my best to make it seem like an eternity.
Well said.
Right. Because True Confessions, I don't know how. I bit my tongue the other day. My tongue is sore. But that's okay. Should I sit down? Oh, yes. Okay. Oh, good. Oh, I don't want to be that. All right. Thank you. Okay. Oh, no. That's okay because you're my cousin. You know, and let's think about our cousin, man. You know, Even now, you know, she should have been in the White House, right? Yeah, she's our cousin, man. Ask Michael about that. I'll be mysterious. I will only say, I feel the need now in our paucity of meaningful speech. That's the scarce resource that our poet's intelligence provides. And all we got to do is just be a little bit entertaining. And by entertaining, I just mean that's how we touch the language of the people, which is Louis Armstrong breaking formality, you know, with the vice regent or whatever he was. You know, it was the time and place to do that. So Louis Armstrong did that in a humble letter, seen from by chance. And then we have the story, you know, and the story, you know, of Charlie Parker and the Hot Peppers. These are the things of folk tales. These ingredients, you know, go down through history in communities, in person. And this is the substance of culture. And this can flourish in cultures no matter what form of government, you know, is there passing before our eyes. So for this, you know, morale is good. So I'll try not to read too much Madame Blavatsky, and I'll read a poem, and then it'll be okay. And it might even be less than 5 minutes. But what is time anyway? So, you know, if I'm going to mention Madame Blavatsky, I've got to say that there are places where the living are the ones who haunt the dead. And the ghosts are the ones who are frightened of the living. The ghosts are the ones for whom the living are invisible. But to the living, the ghosts are very visible. And so much so in our desire to observe them up close. Even if they are kings or queens, our living breath may overcome them. And they may fall to the ground overcome, you know. But they mean us no harm, and we mean them no harm. And sometimes they give us gifts. Sometimes the gifts they give us are heavy in their world, like gold, but paper in our world, in our dimension. You know, so we are strangers in a strange land. And I'm not the first one who said that. And that's, yeah. But now I understand it for the first time. And I'll just say this, and then it'll be okay. Speaking of that, you know, when he said, you know, it's like this confession is a true one, you know. Speaking of this, he said, in this world you will have trouble. In this world you will see trouble, you know. And but fear not, I have overcome the world, you know. And this is an image of the consciousness of the living word, which is the intelligence of living speech, which is offered to the community, you know, me on behalf of you and you on behalf of me. This is democratic communion. And they can't even see this, much less destroy it. But we can live by it and feed it and be fed by it. So, preaching. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. We didn't have the normal format tonight, but it was very delightful, very intimate, a lot of beautiful moments, and wow, very nice. A month from today, I think it's December, is it the 6th? I'm not sure. The first Thursday of December. We do have 2 readers scheduled for that evening. Everyone's welcome to come back to. Yeah, it would be great to see you again. To hear the featured readers and then the open session and what have you. And it's wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for being part of the evening. Yeah.
Don't forget to submit to Poetry for the People.
Yeah, and don't forget the Poetry for the People events going on all month.